Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to Product Market Fit with Pavan Katepalli. My name is Colin Main, and I'm a program manager at the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center. And for those of you who may not know and are joining us for the first time, the NASDAQ Center is a nonprofit dedicated to enabling entrepreneurs from all over the world to realize their maximum potentials and grow. As you may have seen in the chat, the NASDAQ Center, along with our partner Mentor Cloud, launched a free mentor matching platform for entrepreneurs called Mentor Makers. Create your own advisory board to guide and inspire you with in-the-moment mentorship from topic experts and professionals dedicated to providing exceptional mentorship to entrepreneurs across all races, industries, and geographies. So find or become a mentor today by using the link in the chat. As we know, mentorship matters to all entrepreneurs. Their success is dependent on it. Quick housekeeping item, we're going to open up for live Q&A at the end of the event, so please submit your questions for Pavan in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen throughout the presentation. We'll try to get to them all. Now, none of what we do here could be possible without all the amazing support from our sponsors, including NASDAQ, Lehigh University, Bank of the West, KPMG, Wilson Sonsini, Woodrow Sawyer, BPM, and NZTE. We're humbled by their contributions. During these still unique times, we're curious on how sentiment is among the entrepreneurs we work with. So we're going to start by taking a quick poll to let us know how you're doing and also what are some of the challenges you're having. The first question we've been tracking since the beginning of COVID. So hopefully sentiment is increasing on the optimism front, but totally understand that there's some still surviving fear or anxiousness out there. Second question, what's keeping you up at night? Helps us develop the responsive programming that we host just like this one. So thanks for your votes. I'm going to let this run for another minute or another second or so, but I do want to jump into our content today. So I'm going to end this poll and share those results. It looks like optimism's on the rise with the world opening up, but still totally understand that some of you are anxious and just surviving out there. And then on the finance front, finance and sales, well, hopefully our presentation today will help with those. And if not, we will provide some education around those. So without any further delay, please join me in giving a warm welcome to our special guest today. Pavan is a serial entrepreneur, and he was an early stage C-level exec at Trilogy Education, one of the fastest growing ed tech companies of all time that got acquired. So he does know a decent amount about product market fit. So Pavan, I'd love to invite you and welcome you to the stage. Oh, you're muted, bud.
Thanks, Colin. Appreciate that. Hey, thanks so much for coming to this. And I really appreciate Colin and ISIS for putting this together. It's as much of a learning for me as you came here, because like I had to put this together. So it kind of forced me to kind of summarize all of my learnings that I've had to do after my exit. So a little bit why I started researching everything around this is because after the exit, I felt like I didn't know enough to do it again. And I wanted to make sure that the next company I did, I had like a really good framework for, because before Trilogy, I founded 3 companies and they got moderate progress and traction, but I never could get past a certain point. And that point was retention. And so like I would get customers, I would get them to pay, I would get people to come to the site, I would get some of them to use it over and over again, but then I just couldn't get past the next hurdle. I've raised funding. And so with Trilogy, it just seemed like it was a little too easy. And I felt like I didn't learn enough. So I just felt like I needed to put it in all in words. So I talked to a lot of founders, I read a lot of books, and I was able to piece together what was right and what was wrong based on my experiences with a really successful company and a lot of not so successful companies. Yeah, so let me, okay, here we go. So that's me, right? CLO Trilogy, we had a $750 million exit. I'm a mentor here and also 500 startups, made 6 investments since 2019. I'm a programmer. I actually worked on a bill. I was a volunteer lobbyist for the California fur ban law. Surprisingly, fur has $40 million of sales in California, and there are fur farms where animals were kept in cages. So really proud to kind of have that bill passed, and it was really interesting to see things from that perspective. And that's kind of where I want my life to kind of be right now, where it's towards like like uh, something good.
Hey,
I like
Pavan,
I,
just a
yeah,
quick
sure.
heads up. I'm not seeing your
Oh, you're not seeing my screen. Okay, let me just
yep,
make sure. Thank you so much, Colin.
all good.
Yeah, so you
Looks
guys
great.
you guys didn't miss anything. Yeah, so I founded 3 previous companies without product market fit. I think that's the most important experience. If you've ever founded a company without product market fit, you can apply everything I'm talking to you about uh, extremely well. I'm working on a casual multiplayer gaming platform, and so I'm trying to apply everything I'm teaching you um, to that. Yeah, so that's me. This is me in 1999. I was 12 years old. That's my brother, and I grew up in New Jersey, and I just learned HTML4 and JavaScript. CSS wasn't even around then, and JavaScript was like a play language. No one was quitting their jobs to learn JavaScript. Um, Matter of fact, websites would have 2 different versions in 1999. They would have a JavaScript version and they would have a non-JavaScript version because some browsers couldn't handle the JavaScript. And I think JavaScript was by default turned off in a lot of browsers. And it was a very different time. And I uh, I often think I should have just quit school back then and just gotten a job, because like those skills that were just for fun were extremely valuable in 1999. And so a lot of people learn in so many different ways. I learned HTML and JavaScript from my friend Vlad, and when I was in 7th grade. So Vlad, he asked me to do math homework for him. So I did his math homework for him. He didn't want to get tutored. He didn't want that. He just wanted his homework done. And in exchange, he made me a Dragon Ball Z website, which is what all the cool 12-year-olds watched back then. Um, and so he got sick and tired of me asking for updates on the website, that he just like taught me how to update it. He taught me how to use a file of like an FTP, a way to like update the files on the server. And that was really like what fueled everything, because I learned HTML and JavaScript from a very early age. 2010, when I started my first company in East Brunswick, New Jersey. And this is 2019 when we had the Trilogy exit, and I was in Berkeley, California. And this is at the Animal Liberation Conference. Now, going to why you're here, right? I just wanted to give you a little background about like where I come from, so you can relate to me a little bit. But product market fit, how people define it, they define it in many different ways. But for this presentation, when you think of product market fit, it's how customers find a lot of value. It's like when they get a lot of value out of your product. It's when they buy your product, they recommend it to your friends, and they use your product over and over again. That's product market fit. But like, what is product market fit look like when you're almost there, right? And this isn't the most important part of the presentation, but I think it's important to kind of have these things in your mind, right? Because this is what an investor looks at. This is what I look at. If I see that you don't have this as an investor, then I think, okay, well, come back to me when you do, right? And here's some help, right? That could help you get there. So if you're doing enterprise sales, Like you're selling to a big company with a contract, or to a government body with like an annual contract or a 2-year contract. You want to see that 70% of the trials convert into annual contracts after 30 days. And if you're thinking, well, my trials are 90 days, stop the 90 days, do 30 days and see if they convert after 30 days. For an enterprise company, you need to be hand-holding along the way. Like you have to be hand-holding along the way, especially if you don't have product market fit right away. Like you need to be seeing where the drop-off rate is and everything. And then, so for an e-commerce company, what does product market fit look like when you're really early? You want to see hundreds of new customers each week. And you want to see 40% of them subscribe. And that's challenging. It's like, wow, how can I get 40% of my customers to subscribe? That sounds insane. I'm doing Facebook ads, but like a lot of them won't convert. Well, in the later part of the presentation, you'll see how to find the right customers. You also want to see a 3x LTV to CAC ratio. So LTV is the lifetime value, and CPA or CAC is cost per acquisition, and or cost of acquisition if it's CAC, right? So you want to see that kind of ratio if you're e-commerce. Consumer, so if you're building like Facebook, right, or a game, you want to see like a lot of people being active after sign up. Active meaning meaningful usage, and we'll talk about this later. And like you want to see 3 out of 7 days of usage every week. But how they use your consumer product could be different, right? So if it's a work product, then it's a consumer work product, like a to-do app, then maybe they just don't use it during the weekends. Maybe people are just having fun during the weekends and you don't have to worry about the weekends, right? You're focused on the weekdays. And if you see a huge drop, but let's say it's Martin Luther King Day, then whatever, right? Because the usage should drop then. So for every 5,000 users, you want to have at least 100 organic signups per day. And that indicates a high NPS score and users recommending the product to other people. You want to see a clear path to 100K users. And it's even better if you have a viral loop, like they call it a positive K factor. It's when, like, let's say I join the app and then I invite like 5 people, and then 2 of those people sign up, and then each of those 2 people invite 5 people, and then 2 of those people sign up. Basically, every time someone signs up, they invite more than 1 person to the app. Well, more than 1 person they invite join the app. And that's a positive viral loop. Slack kind of has this factor in it. If you're a SaaS company, you want to see 5% conversion rate from free to paid, a 3x LTV to CAC ratio, just like your e-commerce company. You want to see less than 2% monthly churn, so your customers aren't leaving you. That's very important. That's like something like churn is more important than your LTV to CAC ratio. If I see that you have 0 churn, I'm like, wow, that's pretty impressive. That means you have something special there. A clear path to 100K MRR, which is basically saying you have 1 million ARR. So the last 2 slides are, I got that from andrewchen.com's blog. He is a partner at A16Z, one of the best venture capital companies in the world. If you look at their portfolio, it's like exit, IPO, 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 IPO. If you don't want to be an entrepreneur, then you should just go work for an A16Z company. That's my feedback to like anyone who's like, I'm not ready to be an entrepreneur yet. But anyway, this is a drawing of me and product market fit. The dream is that you get there in 1 month, right? But that's not realistic. What I thought was more realistic when I was starting my like companies after reading like the Lean Startup. I know you guys probably have heard of the Lean Startup, like minimum viable product by Eric Ries. You think, okay, well, I'll work hard on something, I'll build the minimum, and then I'll make something, and then maybe I won't get there, and then I'll build something else, and then I'll get there, right? And that's not reality either, right? What you should expect is actually a lot more funny. You should expect this, and I know this looks ridiculous, like No. I'm going to build something. No. I'm going to build something. No. I'm going to build something. No. 27 times later, you get to product market fit. So you should, when you start a company, you should be ready for 27 pivots. If you want product market fit. And when I say product market fit, I mean, like, if you want to build something like Facebook or Slack, right? You need to be ready for this. This is what you need to be ready for. This is why perseverance is the most important skill for an entrepreneur. If you don't have perseverance, if you can't work hard for 27 pivots, then it's going to be very difficult. So what do I mean by a pivot? So it's not every single one is going to be a totally different product. Maybe you'll have 1 to 4 big pivots, right? 1 to 4 big pivots where you're targeting a different customer, it's a different industry, it's a different problem you're solving. And then the majority of pivots you're going to do are going to be different feature focus, right? You're going to focus your effort on a different feature. So the majority of the time, it's not going to be as dramatic, right? As like, oh, we're a music app, but now we sell software to nonprofits. It's not going to be that dramatic, right? That's like a big pivot. So 27 pivots, but like, what are the big pivots? What are the small pivots? So for big pivots, you should expect like 12 weeks or more. But like, I'm going to say 12 weeks because you should be racing, right? You shouldn't be like casually walking to product market fit. You should be running there. So 12 weeks for your big pivots, 3 weeks for your small pivots. So here's a big pivot right here, another big pivot, product market fit. So this is going to take 2.2 years to kind of get there. And this is not counting like taking a vacation or holidays or weekends. And so really it should be like 3 years maybe. And that is if you can work hard during these time periods, right? So perseverance, very important. But before you start the journey, right, you should have a small team, less than 5 employees, because if you have more than 5, then information is siloed. And then if you have managers, then you have to have meetings and to figure out what's going on. And then you're a big company. You've lost all advantage of being a small company. Like a small company can just run circles around a big company because they just make decisions extremely fast and all the information is right there on the table. And there are no politics, everything's flat. The founding team should have complementary skills. If you don't, then that's really bad. The employees should push you. You shouldn't push them. If you find employees that you have to motivate, they're not the right ones for the company, right? And they would be happier somewhere else. And you need people that can build fast, right? Extremely fast. Because like it's a sprint, right? This isn't like a casual stroll in the park. Because like you have a burn rate. You have a burn rate for the money you have a burn rate for your own motivation. And so, get people that are fast and people that you don't have to push, complementary skills. Now, what do you do in those 12 weeks, right? This is if you haven't been paying attention in this entire presentation, that's fine. Just pay attention here. Your goal in that 12 weeks is to find a good customer. A good customer is someone that spends time, effort, money, and resources towards a micro problem that you're solving, right? Think about that micro problem. And they're already doing what you're solving. They're already doing it. I'll give you an example of a bad customer, right? So when I started my company, Bloggers Compete, a blog contest platform, I actually got companies to pay me for the product before I built it. They just thought it was a really good idea. And I just gave them a huge discount. And that's how I partially funded the company in the beginning with some customer sales. And that sounds really great, right? Aren't they such good customers because they paid me even before they could use it? And what ended up happening was that they were bad customers because they used it once and then they never used it again. And it's because I built the product for people that weren't actively trying to solve that problem. Even though they thought it was a good idea and they gave me money for it, because they weren't solving that problem already on their own, they were bad customers, right? So think about that. So how do you find these good customers? First of all, you don't build, like do not build, talk to your users, right? And I'm going to talk to you about what you should say, what should the conversation be in the next slide. But you're on a search for good customers. You need to talk to them to find them. You want to build one feature, and they call this an MRP, a minimum remarkable product. And the minimum, you want to be the minimum, you want to find the minimum to be 10x better, right? You're not in a race for, if let's say someone has 20 features, you're like, oh, I need 25 features. Wrong, really wrong, right? You just need to be, you need to find that one feature that you could be 10 times better at, right? And that one feature you focus on needs to solve that micro problem that your good customer is already solving on their own. And if you're wondering, like, if they're already solving it, then why do they need you? Well, they might be solving it in like a really horrible way for them. So for example, maybe they're doing a ton of math in Google Sheets. Or maybe let's just say, I'll give you an example. I used to floss, right? And now I use a water flosser. A water flosser is like a floss, it's like flossing, but like with like a powerful stream of water, right? And so they like, if you target someone that never flosses, then maybe that's not easy to get them to kind of join your product. But if you target people that floss and hate it, water flosser is a great example of that. You got to fit into the user flow. If the user has to like go outside and dig a hole and then sit in the hole and like cover themselves up, that's a terrible example, but like no one does that, right? So you got to make sure it fits into their flow. Like if someone opens their email every day and you're telling them, oh, never open your email ever again, it's going to be hard for those people to change. And again, the user has to be doing this feature in some way on their own. It's okay to work on other features, but do a bad job. Do a bad job on the other features, because you need the other features. You need to sign up, right? You need like an email notification, but don't worry about those. Don't worry too much about those features. Focus on that one thing, and talk to users. So I said talk to users, right? So what should you talk about? So this is like the majority of my research, right? So here are some of the questions that I have, but like, what's the hardest part about doing this thing? Tell me about the last time you encountered this problem. Why was this really hard, right? What have you done to solve this problem, right? That's how you find out if they're actually trying to solve it. What don't you love about the solutions you've tried? If someone says, well, if you built this for me, then I'll pay you. That's terrible. No, right? Don't use the future, use the past and the present. Like, what are they doing right now and what have they done already? That's the only thing you can depend on ever, right? You can never depend on the future because no one knows the future. Even if someone promises you that they'll use it, they're liars. They won't use it, right? Because I've had that where someone said, oh my God, you're a genius. This is amazing. Here's some money. And then they never use it, or they use it once, and they never use it again. So you're trying to find that good customer right now. And so I've written a lot more about this on my blog, and I could do an entire presentation on just this. So I've written a ton about this. I'm going to write more about this, but like really you could take a look at my blog and get like a lot of context on like how to interview customers. And I have some case studies here, et cetera, et cetera. I also have like a documents tab right here on my blog, and it leads to this like little Google sheet where I just like give you all the questions in my blog that I've developed and researched from other people also. And so it's just all broken out for you here. Colin and Isis will share you the link to my deck, which will include everything. So don't worry about that. And now let me go back. And so really you're trying to find context, right? You're trying to talk to the user as if they're just a person. You're trying to learn about them. You want to pretend you're like writing a book about their life when you're talking to them, right? You need to be so interested in this person and everything that they're doing. The last thing you want to talk about is your product. You do want to talk about your product, but at the very, very end, you want to talk about your product, right? Because sometimes when you talk about your product, they'll be like, oh, well, we actually use this thing. And you're like, why didn't you tell me that when I asked you what you use? And it's like, I don't know why they didn't do that. This is something I've experienced. I talked to people at Coinbase, and then I asked them like, hey, what are you using to do this thing? And they're like, oh, we're using nothing. And then I would show my product, and then they would say like, oh, we're using this thing. But at the very end, right? Because it's not about your product, it's about them. Your product is important. They're important. So a case study right here, Virgin Atlantic. Virgin's such a huge name, right? And believe it or not, it was a startup that started Virgin Atlantic. And they borrowed the name from Richard Branson. They licensed it from Richard Branson. And so when they started the airline, they knew they couldn't compete on price, right? It's going to be more expensive. They knew they couldn't compete on points. You know, they're new. They knew they couldn't compete on lounges. They're new. They knew they couldn't compete on the routes, right? They're new. So, but what does that leave them with? Nothing, right? Like they can't compete on anything. And so they were forced into this, into talking to users, right? Which is the most important thing. And they were trying to find a hidden problem, right? And that's what you should be doing when you're talking to users. You're trying to find context, and you're trying to find a hidden problem from them that they're actively trying to solve. And they found out that inside the airplane and boarding the airplane was a terrible experience that everyone hated. And they were like, oh, okay, well, we could just make that 10 times better. We can make the experience of being on a flight 10 times better. And so that's what they did. And they grew into a great company because of that. And to this day, they are the best experience. I'd rather be on Virgin than first class anywhere. I'd rather be coach in Virgin than first class on any airplane, because it's just a great experience. And they actually care about doing a good job, because it was part of their values and was the culture that they built their company on. And even the way I feel like they treat their employees is just better than every other airline, because they knew that they need to treat their employees well right from the very beginning, because they're part of that experience. But what do you do for the small pivot, right? I just told you what to do for the big pivot. What do you do for the small pivot? This one's all about finding your best customer, right? Your best customer is one that would be so devastated if they could no longer use your product, like devastated. They would be very disappointed. And that's in this 3-week period, you're trying to find that best customer. So the 6 steps for a small pivot, here's 3 of them. You want to kind of define, when does a user get true value from your product? So let's say you're building a task management thing like Trello. When they finish a task, that's true value, right? And so what about Uber? Uber, like when they complete a ride, that's true value. They got to their destination. What actions in the product indicate the value was created? You got to define that in this 3-week period, right? So when the user marks that the ride was complete on the app, when they click that button, that's when they got the true value. For Trello, when they mark that the task was done, or move it to a done column, they got the true value right there. That's the actions that the user takes. So break that down as well. And then you want to break your users down into cohorts: geography, gender, daytime versus nighttime usage. Maybe there's a particular feature in the app that they're using. And maybe they're in a specific age range, right? You want to break this down. And you want to be curious, right? You want to be a kid, right? Don't be an adult. Be curious, right? Be like, who are these people that are using this product? And be really curious about them. And then, so steps 4 through 5, right? you want to define the timeframes that make sense for your users to come back. So if it's a social app, daily usage makes sense. So like a game, right? Like a game that people play every day, daily usage is important. E-commerce, maybe monthly, maybe quarterly. And then you want to measure those actions, right? Like marking that a task is done against a time frame. So like D1 stands for day one, after day one, W1, week one, month one, quarter, Q1, like after 3 months. And then you want to focus on, you want to really hone your effort as a founder, entrepreneur at the drop off, right? There's going to be a certain point. There's going to be a certain point where people drop off. It might probably, usually after week one, a lot of people drop off, like 60 to 70% of people. And over that, maybe even 80 or 90% of people will drop off after week one. And it's so sad, it's devastating, but that's what everyone goes through, right? And so here's some retention rates for some extremely popular games. Clash Royale is so successful. After day one, 65% of their users still use it. After day 7, 49% still use it. After 1 month, 35% of people still use it. And this is like one of the most successful things out there. Like this is probably one of the most successful products ever, right? And so this is what you're shooting for. But even if you're here, I mean, you've built something people still use over and over again, but you have a drop-off point. Every product will have a drop-off point. Every product will have a drop-off point. Now, retention curve. So if you just graph the retention over time for different cohorts, you'll get these like retention curves, right? So this is a declining retention curve, and this isn't great, right? If you see this, it's okay. This is what happens to everyone, right? People stop using your app. If you see this right here, this one, then this is good. You have product market fit. And people are leveling off at around 22% usage over time. When they like after day 1, they'll have like 22% usage after day 30. And then over here, this is better, right? They have like 30%, over 30% usage after day 1. And this is what people like settle on. And so this is product market fit, and this is what like an investor wants to see. If you see this, as this is probably what most people see, right? This is what I've seen in most of my companies that I've built, except for Trilogy. And so this is common, but that's okay. It's part of the 6-step process for a small pivot. So if you have retention, right? If you have these 2 retention curves, then you want to do the product market fit survey, which I'll show you next. If you don't have retention, you want to go back to talking to users, maybe a different feature, right? You want to focus on 10xing a different feature at that point. Maybe you just got it wrong, right? Maybe the users lied to you. So what's the product market fit survey? So if you have retention, you do the product market fit survey. So you ask these questions. How would you feel if you could no longer use my product, right? And would you be very disappointed, somewhat disappointed, not disappointed? And this is what you're shooting for. So you want 40% of the people that repetitively, so you want to send this survey to the people that are using your app, right? On a repeat basis, whatever you feel like that is, you want to send it to them, right? Don't send it to the people that don't use your product. Do not send this survey to people that don't use your product. You don't care, do not care about them, right? They're not important. What, like, don't be like the person that's like, oh, please come back to my product. Because those people are people that you don't want to build on. You don't want to build your product around those people that left. Build on the people that stayed. And then over here, you want to ask these questions. And these questions, it's just literally trying to get out. What do you love about my product? And what's holding you back from loving me more, right? What do you love? Like, what's the main benefit you receive from using my product? And what can I improve about my product? And then you're also asking them like, what type of person do you think would benefit most from my product? And this is a tricky question because you're basically asking them to describe themselves, right? Because when you ask someone, hey, who would use this? And you're asking someone who uses this, they're going to describe themselves. And then you're going to use this data, and I'll tell you how you're going to use this data. But case study: Instagram used to be a whiskey discovering app, right? So you could discover like new whiskeys to drink and hang out with new people that like whiskey. It's actually kind of a cool idea. I would love to kind of hang out with people and like drink a little whiskey. I'm not a big drinker, but like a friend of mine told me that whiskey was like coffee, and I love coffee. I love drinking coffee. So whiskey's interesting because you're not chugging whiskey, you're just like sipping it and tasting it, and it's a really cool experience. It's like drinking tea, just not as healthy. And so this bourbon app turned into Instagram. Like what? So the Instagram founder asked a question to the users that stayed. Right? He had retention. He had step 6, he had retention. And this was his version of the product market fit survey. This was his version of this. He asked the users that were using the app, why are you still here? And the answer was, oh, the pictures. The pictures are really great. Like I could see like everything, like everyone drinking different whiskeys, and I could scroll through it. It's great. And he was like, oh, okay, well, let me focus on pictures. And then people still didn't use it. Even after that, people were still not using it. And he was like, well, he had people use it, but not like a lot of people. And so like he had like, it was probably like a declining curve like this. He had this right here after he focused on just pictures. And then he was like, well, what do I do? He went to the beach because he was like, I have to rethink my life, right? Because this isn't working. Maybe I have to get a job again. And he went with his girlfriend at the time at the beach, and the founder was like, hey, take a picture. And then his girlfriend at the time, he asked like, hey, why don't you post that to Instagram? And she was like, I don't know. I'm not great at taking pictures. And he's like, oh, it looks fine. It's like not as good as this person on Instagram. And he was like, oh, well, that person uses filters. And she goes, yeah, well, I don't know how to do that. And he goes, oh, if I introduce filters in the app, then more people will feel comfortable posting pictures, right? So what did he do? He talked to his users. Why are you still here? And why don't you post this on Instagram? He was talking to his users, and that's how he knew what to build, right? And so you want to summarize this information, the very disappointed profile and the somewhat disappointed profile. You want to summarize this, and you want to inject this into everything you are doing. So in your product roadmap, focus on building things for the very disappointed people. Try to make them love you more. If they say, we love the speed of your app, try to go even faster, right? If they say, well, it would be great if it worked on my iPad, and that's like a common thing everyone says. Like you want to find the commonality of all these people that are very disappointed. You want to focus on like 2 or 3 things. And if they say, it'd be great if it looked on an iPad, focus on that, right? And then you have their own words. They've described themselves, right? Use that in your copy, use that in your ads, use that in your recruiting, right? Ask questions to your employees to your future employees to see if they would have empathy towards your best customers, right? Put that into your onboarding. Describe who your best customers are in your onboarding. And like try to get your employees to empathize with your best customer. Invite your best customers to company activities and have your company empathize with them. So at Trilogy, we would often have our students come to our offsites, to our Zoom sessions, and we would just show employees what they did. Like, look at this person. She was a single mother. She wasn't technically homeless, but she didn't have a home, and she was living with her friend, and she had a kid. And so, but now look at her, she's making $60,000 a year with a great position at this company. And she has her own apartment. Like, you're inspiring your company, you're trying to get them to empathize with your best customer, right? So inject your best customer everywhere. So saying all of that, with Trilogy, it just seemed pretty easy, right? And that's why I went on this journey, because I felt like I didn't learn enough when I was at Trilogy. That's why I spent all this time reading books and talking to founders and just trying to figure out like this whole process, right? With Trilogy, in our first month of launching, we had product market fit. And you wonder, like, okay, well, good for you, right? But here's why. Why did we get that? A growth hack. We had the right growth hack. And everyone else in our industry did not. This was our growth hack, right? This is how we got to $750 million. We went and partnered with universities, and we did it extremely quick. Sometimes we would talk to a university and we would close a partnership within 1 week. Whereas like our competitors, like General Assembly, Flatiron School, they would spend years trying to partner with universities and go nowhere because they were going to the computer science department. We went to the continuing education department of universities, and and here's the thing, right? They already partner with companies. Computer science departments, they've never partnered with companies. But now, like, if you focus on people that already do the thing that you're trying to do in some shape or form, it's just easy at that point. Things are just a lot easier. So we partnered with the continuing education department, and we did like a revenue share with the university. The university would give us their resources. We would provide them with top like instructors that we source, a very solid curriculum that we work with them on, and we would give them revenue share where we would share in the revenue for the students for this special program. And so it was a big hit. And that was the main reason why we grew really fast, these partnerships. Now, what other growth hacks are out there? Helium Health has a growth hack. This is an African hospital software company, right? So they make software for hospitals in Africa. And it was started by just two founders, probably like you guys, you people out there. I'm trying to use gender neutral words, and sometimes I say guys, it's just indoctrinated in me. But you know, these Helium Health founders, they went to hospitals in Africa, and the hospitals said to them, cool, maybe later, right? Maybe later. And so they weren't really getting much response. And then they started talking to private practice doctors. And what they realized about these private practice doctors is that they loved the software. They loved the software, but they can't really pay for it because they don't really have the big budget of a hospital. So, but these private practice doctors, a lot of African doctors, they go abroad to study, and then they come back to Africa to work in Africa. But when they go abroad to study, they were using all this software, and they come back to Africa, and then the software isn't there. And they're like, can you get software? And the hospitals were like, no one really makes it for us. And so when they went to these private practice doctors, they gave the software for free. And then the doctors would make the intros into the hospitals because they all consulted for the hospitals. They had their private practice, and just the way all these doctors worked where they would also work for the hospital. So all of a sudden they went from maybe to closing in like 3 weeks. They would close a hospital in 3 weeks by giving the software for free to the private practice doctors. Growth hack. That's why they raised $10 million recently in a Series A. Tinder. If you've ever used a dating app, luckily I was able to meet my partner in real life, because I don't think she would have swiped right on me. I had to use a lot of jokes and humor to kind of get her to like me. But Tinder grew in a very unique way. Back when Tinder was starting, all the dating applications were using ads, right, to grow. What Tinder did was they went to sororities and on campuses, and they said, hey, we'll throw a party for you, just for you, because you're special. And all you have to do to come to this party is make a Tinder profile and show your Tinder profile complete at the door. And they asked the sorority, hey, what fraternity would you like to invite to this party? And then they would go to the fraternity and say like, hey, you guys are invited. By the way, your sister's sorority is coming, and you just need to make a Tinder profile. And they had all these young people at a bar using Tinder, and they did this at tons of different colleges. And meanwhile, everyone else was like, hey, how do you make a better Facebook ad? They were like, what's Facebook? They grew Tinder in this very unique way. And it was just better. It was just easier. They didn't have to spend much money. Airbnb, right? So Airbnb basically just went to Craigslist, and they found people who were looking for rooms, and they were like, hey, I have a room. Can you just come here on Airbnb? And we have a bunch of pictures over there, and there's, can you come to Airbnb? And then they would have like a way to post on Craigslist as well for people when they started out. So they really, really stole stuff from Craigslist. But that's fine, right? Because that's where their target users were. Their target users were on Craigslist. Hotmail was a really popular email service, and at the end of emails, they put like a link to Hotmail, like get your free email at Hotmail. So that was their growth hack. This is very common nowadays. I think people are kind of like numb to this. So I don't know how well this works, but it probably does work to a degree. It's just kind of boring. Ahrefs, they do SEO software, right? Search engine optimization. So they made these coffee cups, right? With information about coffee, the coffee keyword, like how difficult is it to get ranked, right? The keyword difficulty, how much volume does this keyword get, right? Globally. And then they put these coffee cups at the Brighton SEO conference all around. So they were able to kind of get a lot of awareness to companies by using this little growth hack. This is kind of similar to a lot of founders, how they kind of like hack their way into conferences without paying much. So Uber, what did Uber do for their early users? So this is actually interesting. What Travis did was he went to South by Southwest, and South by Southwest is horrific, but for having like so many people and terrible traffic, and it's impossible to get a taxi there. So he showed how, hey, he had a street team of people, and he had a bunch of Uber cars ready right there. And he said, hey, download this app and then click this button, and we'll pick you up for free and get you to your destination. And so they clicked the button, and instead of waiting like 3 hours for a taxi that would charge them like $70 or something ridiculous, the car just came right there, right to their feet when they pushed this button on the app and took them to their destination. He wowed all those people. He wowed all of them. And so that was Uber's growth hack. Fubu, right? Damon John, the Shark Tank entrepreneur and judge, right? What did he do to get a lot of people to buy Fubu, the clothing brand? So he gave it to bouncers and security at nightclubs. And so a lot of people would see this and they would be like, hey, where'd you get that shirt? And so that was like one of his big growth hacks. And then so a recap, talk to users, right? Right. Don't just like tell them about your product though, right? Like interview them, right? This isn't about you. This isn't about your product. It's about them, right? You're just like a CNN reporter, and you're trying to learn, or like you're on 60 Minutes. You're an interviewer on 60 Minutes, and you're just trying to learn about them, right? What makes them so amazing, and what have they done already to solve a problem? And focus on the micro problems, not the big problems. Like if they say, I want to be a millionaire, that's a big problem. If they say like, I want my calendar to be optimized in this very specific way. That's a micro problem. You want to define value for your customers, define actions that demonstrate that value, timeframes that measure those actions that make sense. And then you want to measure that engagement in D1, D1, D7, D30, Q1 timeframes. And you want to see that in retention curves. If the retention curves are flattening, good. If they're not, then go back to talking to users and do this cycle again. Thank you so much. If you're looking for growth hacks and inspiration, follow me on Twitter. If you're looking for product market fit training, I'm not going to release a course, but all my writing is here. And I'm constantly changing my writing because I'm trying to like learn this the best way possible for myself. I also run a founder Discord group. You can email me here if you're interested in joining my founder Discord group. We just like basically help each other sometimes. It's just a place that I made because I was really lonely. The coronavirus really screwed things up. And so I got all my friends together in a Discord and we just like share, wins or questions that we have to people. And it's been really helpful to have a bunch of people to talk to that are founders. So thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you, Pavan. This is amazing. Everyone in the chat is blowing up, saying this is the best thing they've had in 21. Great job. Loving it. Generous. So
Awesome.
Really, really appreciate it. We're going to try to get to some of the questions because I know some of you have some burning ones. But Pavan also gave you guys his email. So if you want to join his Discord, I'm sure if you don't get your questions answered here, then I'm sure you could get them answered in that Discord. Also, Pavan, just so you know, people are asking if you want to do a part 2. So potentially we can explore doing that, but we'll talk about that offline. So sure, just to start us off, Jennifer had a question which is, should I assume that for investors, the only product market fit that matters is paid conversions and perhaps not so much for nonprofits?
Yeah, so paid conversions are good, right? But you want to demonstrate like flattening retention curves, right? You want to show retention, right? Don't worry about the paid conversion is important, but if let's just say, so I'll give you an example. An example is like I invested in a vegan protein powder company, and his conversions weren't great, but I tried the product. It was really good. And the customers that he had were using it a lot. Like one person bought like $1,000 worth of it. So the entrepreneur wasn't great at Facebook ads, right? But the entrepreneur was really great at making a product that people loved, right? So if you can kind of demonstrate that, that's like great.
Yeah, LTV is important.
Exactly.
How many user interviews are good enough to understand the problem?
There are no amount of user interviews enough, right? Because, and if you go to where I wrote about user interviews, like interviewing users, it's the most important thing to do as a founder, more important than building your product. Because when you're on this search for users to talk to, you're trying to find people that actually have this problem. When they actually have this problem and they're actually trying to solve it, right? They don't just say like, oh, I'll buy this if you make it, right? They actually are trying to solve this problem. You can build your product around them, right? That's number one. Number two, you'll find out how they think, where they are. So then you could find out what your growth hack is going to be, right? So for Uber, they knew like, okay, well, they're going to be at this crowded conference and they're going to have a really hard time finding a taxi. Because when you start off with Uber, it's like, well, why would I use Uber? I would just use a taxi. Like Uber's going to take forever to get here. And you don't even serve the city. But like, you know what I mean? But like at South by Southwest, everything's so crowded. Their target customer's right there, right? They can't get a taxi. It's too hard. And it's going to take too long. And it's going to be too expensive. So it's the perfect place to do it. And you would only know that if you like talk to people. So talk to as many people as possible.
Awesome. Yeah. And continue to talk to them. right?
Yeah.
Like I guess the lean startup method says like 100 people, but you're saying continue. It's
Always.
always ongoing.
Always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody had a question around how do you go about finding new customers to talk to for a B2B SaaS product?
Yeah, it's a great question. So you're going to start off with like anyone that's willing to talk to you, right? Because any feedback's better than no feedback, but you have to just remember that if they aren't trying to solve any of the problems that you can solve, like if they're not solving anything on their own at all, then they're not that feedback. You just have to take it like lightly, very lightly. And so, how do you find these people? It's going to be a lot of hustling, right? But like use the growth hacks for inspiration, right? Tinder went to colleges, right? So they realized that if we get all the young people to use something, then everyone else will follow, right? And so they went to colleges. Helium Health went to private practice doctors. Trilogy, my company, went to continuing education departments. And so use these examples of of how other people have growth hacked to inspire you to kind of think of innovative ways to get to your customers, right? You're going to have a hypothesis, and then you'll go talk to them, and you might find out that they're not trying to solve this problem. So then you have to go try to find another person, right? So you're on this pursuit for good customers.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Question around mailing lists. Is it important to have users signed up to use the MB feed before getting to build the MVP?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. It's important to have people and don't ever do MVPs, do MRPs, right? Minimum remarkable product, right? You want to do one feature that's 10x better than everyone else out there. And that one feature is something that people are already trying to do on their own. And every other feature in your app is bad. Like you're not really focused on it, right? You're only focused on that one feature in the beginning. And so if you've talked to people already, then that's good, right? You don't want to, you want to build something while talking to people, right? And you really only want to build when no one will talk to you. When you can't find anyone to talk to you, then go build. And if you can find someone to talk to, stop building and talk to them.
Awesome. No, that's great advice. And we're at time. So sorry for the questions that we didn't get to, but Pavan's slides will provide information if you guys want to join that Discord. Pavan, this has been an amazing insights and looking into your brain on product market fit. So thank you so much on behalf of everybody from our team and everyone in attendance for sharing your wisdom today. Everyone just keep saying thank you. Such insightful feedback. This is an amazing presentation. So I believe you nailed the point of this, which is sharing product market fit wisdom with our community. So thank you so much for joining us. For those of you still on, we've got some great webinars coming up. So take a look at those. On June 28th, we've got No One Succeeds Alone with Robert Refkin, the only African-American CEO to list an IPO company, the first. And also on July 20th, how to scale yourself while scaling your company. So thank you so much, Pavan, for joining us today. For everyone online, we look forward to seeing you back digitally soon. Thanks again, Pavan.
Later.